Welcome to Miss V, the Storyteller Podcast, Season 5. I am your host, Miss V, the Storyteller, and I am so excited about today's story. But before I share the story, can you do me a favor and push the thumbs up button? That's the button that has the thumbs up button that represents that you like the video. And also, please share it. If you know someone that needs to hear this story, please feel free to share the story. The name of the story that I'm going to share with you today is called The World's Best Aunt, in my opinion. When I was a little girl growing up, it was nothing but family around. My mother had a huge family. It was about 22 of them, and my mom was the baby. Now, my mom was raised in North Carolina, but she moved to Virginia when she got older. When she moved to Virginia, she had three other sisters who lived here. So they were like thickest thieves. We used to go over, they used to take turns having card parties where they played spades and all different kinds of cards. And we would go from one week to the next week to the next week to their houses. Now, one of my aunties, while we were growing up and we were going to these parties and we would get together, she began to go blind. One day we went over her house. The game party was at her house, and she had these dark shades on, and we didn't understand as children what was happening. And so my mom was telling us that my auntie was losing her sight. Her name was Aunt Sissy. Don't ask me why they call her that, but my entire life, her name was Aunt Sissy. So a little bit more time passed, and she went completely blind. It was very difficult for the sisters as well as her, but she adapted. She took classes, and she learned how to function as best she could being blind. So as I was growing up, I began to migrate more to her and spend more time with her. And I would go over her house every other weekend, sometimes every weekend, just to be with her. Now, I had some cousins that used to spend a lot of time with her as well. She didn't have any children, so her nieces, aka slash daughters, because that's what we were more like, we would take care of her. We would go over there and whatever she needed, we would do it for her. Well, as my cousins who were older than me, as they began to get their families, it left me. So I would go over there and we would spend time together, and I loved it because at my house, I wasn't a fan of being there all the time. I was like, I just need to be away from y'all. So I would go and spend time with her. I would wash her hair, I would do her nails and clean her house, and sometimes I would help her to cook. Now, she stayed during the day, she stayed home, but she had this mean dog in the backyard. That dog was not going to allow anybody to get in the house or near it, not even the mailman. Every time he came, that dog went completely crazy. So we all felt comfortable during the times that she stayed home by herself. Well, one particular day, I was sharing with her about my graduation from high school, and it was coming up. And I told her about it, and she was like, okay. I gave her an invitation, and I wasn't sure if she was going to be able to make it because, again, she was blind. And I knew from taking her to different stores that crowds could sometimes be overwhelming, trying to protect her and her really not knowing what's going on, although her ears were sharp as tacks, but still. So I gave her the invitation, and the day of my graduation, I saved her seat. I told her to just call and let us know when she arrived, and I would send somebody to come and get her. And that never happened. So at graduation, I didn't see her in the seat, but it was okay because I understood why. So at my graduation party, my phone rung, and it was my aunt. And she called and she said, I am so proud of you. I get so emotional when I talk about her because she is my heart. So she said, I'm so proud of you. She said, we came to the graduation. but your uncle felt like it was just too much for me. But I sat in that parking lot until they called my baby's name, and I heard them call your name, and I was in the car, and I was just cheering you on. And she just doesn't know how much that meant to me. The fact that she came and sat in the parking lot just to hear my name. So, moving on. So, after that, I even wanted to spend more time with her. So I did. And when I got my driver's license and I was driving, I began to drive her to North Carolina to church. Now, you may think North Carolina to church, yes, because that was her childhood church. She grew up in it, and that's the only church that she wanted to go to. So I would drive her to church. We would go to church. After church, we would go visit one of her sisters, one of her older sisters, and we would go to her house. And my aunt Lucy, that was her sister, she had the craziest husband. Every time we went, he had us laughing so hard. He would sit and tell us stories. And I don't know if half the stories were true or not, but some of them were so funny. They had my stomach just hurting. Oh my God. And then she would give us something to eat, and then we would come back home. Well, this became a ritual, and we would go, and her ears were, like I said, sharp as tack. She would hear things, and she was learning things about me, because sometimes on the way home she would just say different things to me. She said to me one time, "Why is it that every time someone gives you a compliment, you always tell them what is wrong with you?" I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And she said, "Why don't you just tell them thank you?" And I said, "Okay." And then there was another time she said, "Why do you always walk around with your head down?" Like, how does she know my head is down? Somebody must have told her, or she must have overheard somebody talking. And she said, "You hold your head up." So she used to say things to me like that all the time. Little did I know she was literally pouring into me, and she knew I was going to need these things later in life. So one day, my uncle called and he said, "Your aunt's sick, and I'm taking her to the hospital." And I said, "Okay, let me get myself together and I'll be to the hospital." And he was like, "No, no, no, let me wait until, we get her to and we find out what's going on, and then we'll let everybody know. But I wanted you to know." And I said, "Okay." So I got the phone call saying that they were going to admit her in the hospital, and my uncle pretty much said that her diabetes wasn't being friendly. My aunt hated going to the doctors, so I come to find out she wasn't going to the doctors like she should. And she was getting sick at home, but she covered it up so well, I didn't notice. So I got to the hospital, and the family was there, and everybody was there, and I was having a really difficult time. I sat down, I'm listening to everybody, and I began to cry a little bit, when they came out and was telling me what the diagnosis was. And one of my aunts came up to me and she said, "Baby, you got to be strong. You just got to be strong. You can't be breaking down and crying and all that, but you got to be strong." And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, I have to be strong. Did you hear what the doctor said? I'm about to lose my aunt. I know it's your sister, but you don't know what she means to me. She's like another mother, and I'm about to lose her. And I'm thinking to myself, who's going to be the one to tell me to hold my head up? Who's going to be the one to tell me to just say thank you when somebody gives me a compliment? Who's going to be the one that tells me that I am beautiful, although she couldn't see? Who was going to be that person? Because at the time, it was her. And you're telling me to be strong. I'm doing the best I can. Now, I never said this to my auntie, because in my household, you respected your elders, and I would never say anything like that to them. Thinking it, yes, but saying it, no. So I just shook my head and I said, "Okay." And I waited for, everyone to go. And then finally, it was my time to go in to see her. And I walked in and I felt lightheaded, because they had all these things hooked up to her. So I knew it wasn't good. But in my mind, I wanted her to know how I felt about her. I don't know if I had ever said it before, but in that moment, I wanted her to know that I loved her. So I went over to the bed and I kneeled over and I got in her ear and I said, "Hey, Auntie," I said, "I just want you to know that I love you and I'm praying for you." And she held my hand and she looked up at me and she said, "I love you too." Oh, sorry. And in that moment, I was like, "Lord, please do not take her away from me. She's my heart." A few days later, she had gone to heaven. And I got the phone call and they decided to do everything in North Carolina, which was fine with me. So I went, I drove myself. I didn't want anybody in my ear telling me it's going to be all right, to be strong and all that. So I decided to drive myself. And everyone decided to meet at the funeral home. They were going to have the viewing, and then after the viewing, they were going to drive to the church and have the ceremony, the funeral service, and then they were going to go to the gravesite. So I already knew how I felt about going to the funeral home. I did not want to see her body. I don't know how people can go and look at somebody's body when they're gone on. In the hospital, I saw my auntie and she spoke to me, and I was good with that. I didn't need to see her shell or her body. And I'm sitting in the parking lot and I'm just waiting for everybody that wanted to view the body to view the body. And then they kept coming to the car. "You need to go and see it. You're going to regret it. You're going to go and see it." And I'm thinking to myself, I am not. I had my peace. I told her, I don't need to see her body. I don't want to. And they kept coming and they were just overwhelming me. And it got to the point I didn't even want to put the window down when they came to the car. I wanted to say, "Just get out my face and go on about your business. You need to see the body, not me." But again, being respectful, I didn't say that. And I held my ground and I said, "You all go on. I'm not going to go in. Don't send another person to try to talk to me because the answer is no." And finally, they got it. And shortly after I made the definite no, I could hear my auntie in my ear saying, "That's right. Stand up for yourself. Do what makes you feel good." I heard her. And I'm thinking, this is what I'm talking about. I feel her spirit. I hear her. I don't need to see that. Now, for anybody who goes and sees it, that's fine. That's something that you need to do, but everybody doesn't feel like they need to do it. And I'm one of those people. So once that was done, we go to the church and I ride in the limousine. My uncle wanted me to ride in the limousine with him because he said, "You're one of the daughters." So I got in the car. I got in the car and in the limousine, and two of my other cousins was in there because again, we were like daughters to her, and it was very quiet. And I was grateful because I didn't want to hear all of that. I just wanted to sit quietly myself. And everybody else must have felt the same way. We get to the church, they begin to have the service, everybody's around. I see my mom. She's having a hard time. My other two aunties, the four of them, well, three now because she had passed, they sat together, to comfort each other, and it got overwhelming for me again. I had to get up. I couldn't take it. It was so hard for me. I literally felt like my heart was just trying to break out of my chest. It was hurting so hard. So I go to the bathroom and somebody came behind me because they could see that out of everybody, I was having the hardest time out of anybody. So they come and someone comforts me. I don't even know who it was. I get my chest back into its place and I pull myself together and I come out and I sit back down and my mom's looking at me and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm kind of shaking my head. "Yeah, I'm doing the best that I can." So they finish and I walk out of the church because I did not want to risk them lifting, how they lift the coffin for you to go and view. I didn't even want to risk it just in case they decide to do it. So I went out, we go to the burial site, we have it, we go back to the church, they feed us and everything. And I'm hearing everybody saying, asking me, am I okay? And I'm like, that's the dumbest question in the world. No, I'm not okay, but I'm doing the best I can. You asking me, am I okay, is not making me okay. Just hug me, walk away, and pray for me. That's how I felt. So finally, when everything was over, I was just looking and just like, I cannot wait to get in my car and drive by myself so that I can handle this on my own. As I'm driving back home, something happens to my car. The tire breaks. The tire, something happens to the tire, and I have to pull over. And I pull over to the side of the road to find it, and my car gets stuck in the mud because it had been raining. And my cousin, one of my cousins, she was coming back. Her and her husband was coming past, and they saw me on the side of the road. And then my brother came past, and he saw me on the side of the road. So they came over, and everybody figured out how to get the car out of the ditch and fix the tire and all that stuff. And so I'm getting back on the road, and my cousin could see that I I shouldn't have been driving by myself. And she was right because I really was crying and trying to see the road through tears. And she got in the car with me and she said, I'm going to ride back home with you because I don't think that you should be driving. And she couldn't drive a stick. I had a stick shift, but she got in the car with me and we proceeded down the road. And she said, you're just having such a hard time, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Whose house am I going to go over on the weekends? Who am I going to wash? My brain was just over going crazy. And she said, well, let me share with you this. She said, this is the reason why I can do this. She said, Aunt Sissy is now in heaven and she could see. I'm like, what? She said she can see. She can look down here and she can see you. She can see all of us. She can see her sisters, and she's in heaven with her parents and the other siblings that passed before her. She's up there with them. And she's no longer in pain. She's not sick anymore. She's healed. And that was like somebody had literally just lifted the heaviness and all of that pain off of me, just those words. And I was like, wow, I never thought of that. That she's not hurting, that she can see, and that she could see me. And it was like I said, it was so like, oh my God, in that moment, it was like Oprah would say, an aha moment. It was like an aha moment. And I continued on the road. And from that moment on, the burden, the grieving and all that became a little bit easier. I'm not saying that I didn't miss her, but it made it bearable. Just hearing those words and letting those words go over and over and over in my head. And I thank God that He allowed me all the time that I had with her because she really did change my life. She really helped me at a time that was very difficult in my life. Going over her house, sitting with her, listening to her, laughing with her, joking with her, taking care of her, it changed my life. And that is why she is the best auntie in the world, in my opinion. I hope you enjoyed that story. It was very hard for me to share it. Even now, I can just feel it. I know you hear it in my voice, but sometimes God will put people in your life that He knows you need. You may not know that you need it in that moment, but He knows later on that you're going to need the lessons that they taught you. And she taught me so much. So do me a favor. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with someone. But mostly, if you have a story that's kind of similar or someone in your life passed away, you want to share with someone how you got over, put it in the notes. You don't have to tell the whole story, but just put this is how I got over. Like if in my notes, if it was me putting in the notes, one of the things that I would put in the notes is to know that that person that you love, they are no longer in pain and they're in heaven with Jesus. And so, or however way you manage to get over grief, just put it in the comments, and on the next episode or one of the episodes, I will read some of the comments that you've written. All right, friends, thank you so much for listening to this story. I pray that it helps you if you're going through. Don't forget to subscribe, push the thumbs up button, and share. All right, have an amazing day. Bye.